From drums to convergence. The exchange of information over greater distances can be done today within a fraction of a second via various forms of telecommunications media. These include wireless, fixed line and mobile telephones, optical media such as fiber optic cables, television, radio, and of course the internet, to name a few. However, have you ever wondered how people who lived hundreds or perhaps thousands of years ago communicated with each other or conducted important trading transactions over relatively long distances? From the earliest of times, humanity has sought effective ways and means of conveying information over long distances. These messages may have ranged from an important notice from a king to his subjects scattered over hundreds of miles throughout his kingdom, or a tribal chief wishing to ensure all of his warriors were aware of the time and date of the next raid on the neighbouring village. In these early times, drums and smoke signals were often used to transmit messages. In some regions, the most practical and viable form of communication was the human messenger, who went from place to place on foot or riding horses, donkeys, and even camels. In the mid-19th century, for example, the Pony Express was used to crisscross the North American continent to deliver mail over thousands of miles. History has taught us that many inventions take place in a time of war. Thus, when Napoleon seized power in France in 1799, the use of a crude form of telegraph called the optical telegraph assisted his campaign. By the late 18th century, there was increasing evidence that there was a close relationship between electricity and magnetism. In 1837, Morse code was invented by Samuel Morse, and this marked a significant milestone in human communications. Morse code uses a series of dots and dashes to transmit messages over long distances. These messages are then decoded by specially trained persons who interpret the messages on behalf of the person to whom the message was sent. By the 19th century, humanity began to set its sights on an invisible natural resource as a vehicle for communications. This resource is known as the electromagnetic spectrum. The transmission of voice messages over long distances came as early as 1876, when Alexander Graham Bell demonstrated the telephone. In 1901, young Guglielmo Marconi, utilizing the electromagnetic field, sent the first wireless message over the Atlantic Ocean. This invention marks the beginning of the use of wireless technology and paved the way for the development of the wireless communications industry. This development was responsible for the advent of the portable radio in 1915 and the airborne radio telephone after the Second World War. In 1925, John Logie Baird married the Nipkow disk to radio technology and created a crude form of television. By 1929, images were being transmitted across the Atlantic. What we know as the Internet had its genesis in the 1960s when the US Department of Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, DARPA, in a search for a more robust and ubiquitous form of communication, embarked on a project that resulted in the Advanced Research Projects Agency Network, ARPANET. The Single Terrestrial Network ARPANET was created in 1969 and triggered an explosion of networking research which continues today. By 1977, a 4-network demonstration was conducted, linking satellites, packet radio, and ARPANET, creating the very first form of what is now known as the Internet. Then by the 1980s, there was an overlapping use of radio, television, telephone, and the Internet technologies. The age of convergence had arrived. As a result of convergence, we can communicate with friends and family, send and receive information, and be entertained in a variety of ways. Today, we live in a networked society where the use of advanced wired, optical, and wireless communications technologies is becoming an extremely vital part of daily activities. We are all aware of the great contribution these technologies make to personal development, particularly in the area of finance, education, and skills training and enhancement. These technologies are known collectively as Information and Communications Technologies, ICTs. And there are numerous examples at work today. For example, New Generation Networks, NGNs, Wi-Fi and WiMAX, broadband over power lines, radio frequency identification, and satellite radio. Because of the advantages both individuals and countries gain by using these technologies, one may ask whether there is an entity in Trinidad and Tobago that facilitates their availability and proper use. Further, and more importantly, an entity which works toward ensuring that citizens have easy access to basic telecommunication services at affordable prices. The answer is yes. And that organisation is the Telecommunications Authority of Trinidad and Tobago. The authority was established by the Telecommunications Act of 2001 and became operational on July 1, 2004. The role and responsibilities of the authority with respect to new and emerging communications technologies include promoting the telecommunications industry in Trinidad and Tobago by encouraging investment in and the use of infrastructure to provide telecommunications services, ensuring more people have access to telecommunications and broadcasting services by promoting universal access, promoting and protecting the interest of the public with respect to accessing a wide variety of telecommunications and broadcasting services at affordable prices, regulating the telecommunications and broadcasting sectors, managing the radio frequency spectrum resource of Trinidad and Tobago, and managing and administering telephone numbers. Since becoming operational, the authority has been instrumental in the liberalisation of the cellular telephone, satellite, cable television, and radio broadcast markets. As a result of this, citizens of this country who previously had to settle for 2 radio stations, 2 television stations, and 1 provider of telephone services can now purchase mobile telephone services from more than 1 provider, tune in to any one of the country's 36 radio stations, view programs from 6 free-to-air television stations, and choose to access satellite or cable television services from a number of providers. And in the near future, wireless ICT services such as Wi-Fi, WiMAX, and multi-point channel distribution will be accessible locally. So in looking at the history, we've come to the point in the present where our ability to communicate is enhanced at numerous levels, providing easier access to information and entertainment, thereby creating more enjoyable, productive, and generally enhanced lifestyles. We have indeed evolved from drums to convergence, and the question is, what's next?